we are live. Hello, this is Senate Government Operations, and it is still April 6th. Yes, thank you, Brian. And we are going to have a walk through H293. And this is a group of people that we don't normally see. So we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we'll have Ameren walk us through the bill, and then take whatever testimony we need. So I'm Jeanette White, and I am from Windham County.
Hi, I'm Anthony Polina from Washington County.
Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District.
And on the screen is Senator Rom Hinsdale from Chittenden County. And to join us pretty soon is, well, there she comes. There she is.
Sorry, here I am. Thanks for introducing me.
And joining us soon will be Senator Clarkson from Windsor. So Ameren, would you like to walk us through this bill?
Certainly. So I'm looking at H293 as passed by the House. This should be posted to the committee's webpage. The first section is a findings, purpose, and intent section. The beginning subsection A, findings. Young Vermonters are one of our state's most important resources. Youths under 21 years of age represent approximately 24% of the Vermont population and reflect Vermont's diversity. They are a group of dynamic, vibrant, and innovative individuals who are finding new ways to have their voices heard and affect the change they wish to see in the world. 2, multiple perspectives strengthen decision-making and policy development by encouraging innovation, creativity, and change, including the unique perspectives of young persons, improves state policies and programs, including youth-specific services. 3, Vermont's economy depends on the participation of young persons, and empowering them to provide policy advice will help keep young Vermonters in the state. It will also diversify our economy, making it more competitive and sustainable. 4, young persons have the right to be heard and respected. Almost all government policies and decisions have an impact on young persons' lives, and youths have the right to influence those decisions both individually and collectively. Furthermore, involving young persons in political processes helps build trust in democratic institutions, which in turn protects Vermont's democracy. Subsection B is the purpose. The purpose of this act is to create the State Youth Council, composed of young Vermonters who will have an official means of providing advice on policies that impact young persons in Vermont. Subsection C is an intent section. 1, the intent of creating the State Youth Council set forth in this act is to enhance the state's progress in reaching the population level outcomes set forth in Title III, Section 2311B6, Vermont's children and young people achieve their potential, and 9, Vermont has open, effective, and inclusive government. 2, the General Assembly further intends to consider the recommendations of the initial State Youth Council created in this act and to subsequently amend the council's appointing authority, powers, and duties accordingly. So Section 2 would amend Subchapter 4 of Chapter 53 of Title III to add the State Youth Council into statute. I'm now on page 3, Section 3097, State Youth Council, Subsection A. There is created within the Department of Health, the State Youth Council, to advise the governor and the General Assembly on issues affecting young persons in Vermont. Subsection B is the membership section. The council shall be composed of not more than 28 Vermont resident youths between 11 and 18 years of age at the time of appointment. The Interagency Work Group Youth Services Advisory Council shall appoint members from an applicant pool with a focus on prioritizing diversity and inclusion, including characteristics such as county of residence, gender identity, racial identity, disabilities, age, and other characteristics identified by the applicants. The Youth Services Advisory Council shall appoint a minimum of 1 resident youth from each state county. Subdivision 1, the Department of Health shall assist the Youth Services Advisory Council in notifying the public regarding the opportunity for the youth to serve on the council. And the Youth Services Advisory Council shall accept applications for service on the council. The application process should emphasize the need for diverse, qualified candidates. A successful candidate must demonstrate A, a commitment to inclusion and the youths of the state, and B, the ability to work with others and to listen to others. I'm now moving into page 4, Subdivision 2, the Youth Services Advisory Council shall appoint members to the council for 3-year staggered terms and shall strive to appoint council members who represent a variety of youths in the state. the Youth Services Advisory Council shall consult with members of youth advocacy groups concerning initial appointments to establish the council, and then shall consult with the council regarding appointments for all subsequent terms. Subdivision 3, the council shall elect a chair from among its members. 4, the council shall establish an executive committee, ad hoc committees as needed, and then the following standing committees. A, the Youth Voice Committee. B, the Education Committee. C, the Equity and Anti-Racism Committee. D, the Climate Change Committee. And E, the Youth Mental Health Committee. Subsection C has the powers and duties of the council. First, the council may meet at least one time per month. B, hold up to 4 public hearings annually in order to take testimony on issues affecting Vermont youths. C, gather input from Vermont youth through surveys or polls. And D, evaluate the state's progress in reaching the population level outcomes set forth in section 2311 of this title, and recommend to the Joint Committee on Government Accountability any revisions to the population level indicators for those outcomes the council finds necessary to better reflect data that impacts Vermont youths. 2, and then now we're moving into a section on the type of advice the council shall provide to the governor and the General Assembly. So 2, the council shall provide advice to the governor and the General Assembly on policy changes necessary to improve the lives of Vermont youths. A, the governor shall meet annually with the council to hear and receive the council's advice and recommendations on policies that impact the youths of Vermont. B, the council shall annually report its advice and recommendations to the House and Senate committees on government operations and to any other standing committees it deems appropriate. The report may be in verbal form. C, the council shall annually report its advice and recommendations to the House and Senate committees on government operations and to any other standing committees it deems appropriate on the preservation of Vermont's traditions and the future of Vermont's rural character, activities, and professions. Now moving into page 6. D, the council shall annually report its advice and recommendations to the House and Senate committees on government operations and to any other standing committees it deems appropriate on the participation of young persons in Vermont's economy and keeping young Vermonters in the state. Subsection D is assistance. The council shall have administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the Department of Health to assist with council-directed activities, including assisting with meeting scheduling and logistical support, providing information technology support, and providing any technology or technological devices necessary for the council to perform its duties. Subsection E, support. The council shall also have the support from the Youth Services Advisory Council. Subsection F is about meeting attendance. 1, members of the council may attend meetings by electronic or other means without being physically present. 2, the General Assembly finds that such virtual meeting attendance is particularly expedient for council members from remote areas of the state to participate, but also encourages council members to be physically present at meeting locations when possible due to the importance of in-person interaction. Subsection G, compensation and reimbursement. Members of the council shall be entitled to per diem compensation and reimbursement of expenses for not more than 16 meetings per year. Within the definition of meetings, this would also include public hearings. And these payments shall be made from monies appropriated to the Department of Health. Section 3 has some initial provisions to set up the State Youth Council. Subsection A, appointments. The Youth Services Advisory Council shall make the initial appointments on or before November 1st, 2022. The initial appointments will be for 2 or 3 years terms in order to provide staggered council member terms. Subsection B, training. From funds appropriated to the Department of Health to assist with State Youth Council directed activities and in consultation with the Youth Services Advisory Council, the department shall provide to the State Youth Council training on general state policies, how to formulate policy proposals, government operations, public speaking, meeting etiquette, and leadership. Subsection C, duties. In addition to the State Youth Council's duties set forth in Section 2 of this Act, on or before January 15th, 2024, the council shall recommend to the House and Senate committees on government operations the manner in which its members should be appointed or elected and any other amendments to its enabling law. Section 4 has a sunset for this council. So the State Youth Council will be repealed on February 1st, 2026. And then Section 5 is the effective date. This act shall take effect on passage.
Thank you. That was really clear. I wish all of our bills could be quite as clear as that one. It was, I do have a question, maybe this is a policy question for those of you who, first of all, does anybody have any drafting questions for
No.
Ameren? So we have on the schedule here, Una Fonte, Holly Morehouse, Cheryl Wilcox, Sarah Chesborough, and I think that's what I have on the list here. I'm wondering if, I'll pose this question and maybe as you give your testimony, you can answer it because I think it's a policy question, not a drafting question. Why would we sunset the council? That's my only question. So I'm going to start with Una. Do you want to take us off here?
Yes, so the sunset was put in place so that after the initial period, the council could go back and after a first group of youth have served on it, tweaks can be made to fix problems that are unforeseen. Say there needs to be, I'm so sorry, say there needs to be another standing committee or something. Having the sunset would allow for this to be changed later on.
Okay, thank you. And just for when you give your testimony, if you would just identify who you are for the record the first time you speak. So.
Yes, I am Una Fonte and I am from the town of Ferrisburg.
And did you have some testimony that you wanted to give to us in addition to your helpful answer on the sunset?
Yes, I do, if you are happy to hear it.
We are happy to hear it. Thank you.
Now. All right, so my name is Una Fonte from Ferrisburg, and I was one of the original group of 50 youth from around the state who gathered in the summer of 2020. And this was during the start of the pandemic, so under, I'd say, unusual circumstances to begin formulating some recommendations for what a youth council in the state of Vermont would look like. Throughout this process, youth gathered input from other members of their schools outside of the council and came together in small discussion groups to envision what youth leadership in the state would look like. Keep in mind, this was a group of 50 youth from across the state, both geographically varied in diversity, but also in terms of background, education, ethnicity, race, disability status. And having this council create this set of recommendations proves that a group of young people, a group far larger than 28, is able to come together and work to create coherent and logical policy recommendations, which have a positive effect on young people around the state. And putting this into an official format as part of our government, not just simply youth councils organized by various organizations serving youth around the state, ensures that young people have a voice in the vital process of government. We, as young people, I'm now 18, but as young people, you have no vote, but systems of government still deeply impact your life. Most directly, the education system. All young people have to get an education, which is an amazing privilege, but at the same time, designing a system for people without consulting those people creates a system.
Oops, you just froze.
So Una, can you hear us? Well, you can't answer, so.
Helpful in that. Sorry, I'm going on too long.
No, that's okay. Sadly, you froze.
You froze.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, the same youth voice argument applies to climate change. Young people, we are the ones who will be starting families in 2050, but who knows what the world will look like. Having young people in government when it comes to decisions related to climate change will give the sense of urgency needed to pass climate policies that are effective and efficient. And Vermont's youth population is the most diverse in state in terms of race. And this is something that will allow us to design for a state that is more diverse in future by having young people in the room on policy decisions. And finally, we will strengthen democracy and a thriving state that has a balanced population of both young and old by encouraging young people to participate actively within the state's democracy and sending a powerful message that youth matter in Vermont and that youth voices have the ability to shape the systems that affect us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very articulate. Thank you. And I'm glad you were part of that initial group of people. It was a pretty powerful group. Yeah. So any questions for Una?
No, but now I know why Diane Lanfear is the lead sponsor of this bill.
Okay. So Holly?
Hi, thank you, Chair. My name is Holly Morehouse. I'm the Executive Director of Vermont After School, and I had the great privilege of working with Una and her peers on this project through the statewide youth advisory group. You know, the idea for having a state youth council came from the youth way back in 2017. Vermont After School convened a group of young people to work on a Declaration of Youth Rights. And in that declaration, they spoke very eloquently about the right to have a say in policies that affect them and the right to understand the impact of those policies and what it's going to mean to young people across the state. That's really where this idea started. And we began looking at, through Vermont After School and our partners with the 9 to 26 Coalition in Vermont, which is anybody in Vermont who cares about young people ages 9 through 26, began to look at other models in other states and other countries about how to support youth voice and youth leadership in a meaningful way. And Representative Lanfear in the last biennium had introduced a bill in early 2020 that was making some progress until COVID arrived and then it was stalled. And the group that Una spoke to really was an effort to say, like, okay, right now, some of those pieces are stalled because of COVID, but it isn't a time, right, to pause and to stall out on youth voice, especially during COVID, and then more than ever, right, to have a place where young people could be heard, could be part of the conversation, could think about policies. So that initial group did meet throughout the fall of 2020, the summer and the fall of 2020, and they took that original bill, H175, and they broke it down. They looked at it, and their whole charge, that group of 50 young people, was to how do we make this stronger? You know, what do we really think about this? What could we add to it? How would we? And those were where some of the ideas about the standing committees came out, the size of the group. You know, they felt it wasn't enough diversity to have only one from each county. You know, so that's why there's the need for the 28. They talked and debated back and forth about the age range. They went, you know, what kind of supports would they need? What kind of training? How would they get the initial group off the ground? It was a wonderful discussion, and they've been testifying throughout the biennium, and I'm excited to see this move forward out of the House. The other role that I play is I am one of the co-chairs, along with Sarah and Cheryl, on the Youth Services Advisory Group Council. And that is a work group that exists across agency, across state government, and with partners who work in all different sectors to support young people. One of the things that I really like about this bill is that it does not just set up a youth council and say, have at it, good luck, go make change, have your voices heard. It really sets up structures around the young people to help them be most successful. So the support from the Department of Health, who has come forward to say that they would support both around the stipends for the youth, as well as the training and logistical support for the young people, as well as having that group of youth experts who are poised. That group, the Youth Services Advisory Council, has been meeting on this, has been talking about it, has, you know, been preparing for how will we support the youth, you know, not to get in their way, but to make sure that they're set up to be most successful. So I think there's a lot of pieces in this bill that are in place to help this be successful. I also think it's critically important. There's a lot of talk about youth voice, and Vermont After School has been doing tons of work around youth voice for years, and we're getting so many requests these days to, you know, we need to run this by young people. We need their input, but there aren't enough solid structures to do that well, and it's hard to do well. It's not enough to just, you know, find one young person and say, hey, what do you think, right? So what this does is it creates a formal structure that is recognized and supported to allow our young people to have voice. Another thing that the young people who worked on this felt very strongly about it isn't about having 28 young people in Vermont who can speak on behalf of everybody else who's in that age bracket of 11 to 18. They really saw this as a council that would really be charged with how can we hear from as many young people as we can. So more in line with participatory democracy, not just representative democracy. And so that's why you see in the bill the request to be able to have public meetings, to be able to do polls and surveys, and to really try to reach out across the whole state and hear from as many young people as possible. There is a provision in the bill that Representative Lanford had put in that one of the charges to the Youth Council would be, and Una spoke to this, to come back to the legislature with recommendations for how to change their own legislation. So to come back and say, okay, we need actually to meet 20 times a year, or we need to change, the standing committees, or we need a different kind of support structure. So once again, it's putting that recommendations and input into the hands of young people to say, how can we really do this well, and how to make this most successful. Some of the additional reports were added in on the House side. I think there's a report on Vermont traditions, a report on youth in the economy. And so you can, I think that just gives evidence that you start to see that there's this hunger to hear from young people and to involve that in the process. So I just think it shows once again how important this is to have.
Thank you, Holly. Cheryl?
Thank you. For the record, Cheryl Wilcox. I'm the Interagency Planning Director at the Department of Mental Health. I wanted to start by thanking the committee for picking this up. As Holly said, this is the third session that we have really hoped to see this move through. And what I wanted to offer for information was Holly talked about our Youth Service Advisory Council, which is tasked in this bill as really helping to appoint members and support them. That's the group Holly, Sarah, and I chair together. We look closely at data in that group, and the last Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which at this point was 3 years ago, showed that only 58% of high schoolers, which was down from 61%, felt valued in their community. And one of the pieces that we feel really strongly about with this bill and this opportunity for a youth council is to have authentic voice from youth so that they really see the value and what they bring to the table. And the Department of Health, I know Sarah will speak to what the Department of Health is committed to and helping. And I wanted to make sure the committee knew that across our departments of mental health and the health department with the Youth Service Advisory Council, we are really in a place where we have a strong group of committed individuals in that group. We would love to support standing up a youth council and to be able to really bring forth more authentic voice. So thank you so much for picking this up. And I'll let Sarah speak to the health department components.
Thank you, Cheryl. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Sarah Chesbrough. I use she, her pronouns. My job is in maternal and child health at the Department of Health. And as has been mentioned, I serve as co-chair of the Youth Services Advisory Council and have been working closely with Vermont After School on several initiatives. So I really wanted to reiterate the health department's commitment to this bill. The activities, as you heard, are to kind of host, fund, train, provide logistical support. Our Division of Maternal and Child Health has, as you may know, long been in support of youth engagement and youth voice efforts. We work with Holly on some participatory budgeting processes, and I appreciate that Holly said participatory democracy, because this is something we're really learning more about at the health department and valuing in our work. I also think that this youth council will, in public health, we try to look upstream, right? And so this youth council is looking at issues that impact social determinants for all Vermonters and have a keen eye to issues of racial equity, climate change, mental health. I was on a pediatric grand rounds this morning, and this is a good example where the Vermont After School VCHIP and the Vermont RAISE, who are a group of young people who act as public health consultants, just briefed a whole bunch of pediatricians and family docs and public health staff on what they need and what they're looking for in terms of healthcare, and it was incredibly impactful. So this is the sort of thing that the health department knows is on the horizon and really wants to support. The Youth Services Advisory Council has had health department participation since its inception, and I have served on it since 2017. So we do have a lot of the background context and connections that will be helpful here. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Justin Kenny, the Chief Performance Officer for the state and the Vermont Agency of Administration. I use he, him pronouns. I'm kind of late to the game here because I didn't know about this bill until probably just the other day when I was asked to be a witness. But I have a couple thoughts that I think I will share. I really like the formality of this, the fact that it creates a mechanism for the youth to speak to a number of things that we're trying to achieve, as well as the operations of government. So I'm all in on that, honestly. In terms of the outcomes report and the outcomes of well-being and the indicators, the one thing I saw in here, which is I think in Section D, it says evaluate the state's progress in reaching the population level outcomes. That is a very tall order. Like that is a collective thing that even though the totality of state government has a difficult time doing. So I think that would be difficult for the council to actually take on. That said, I do think that the other components of that are fantastic in terms of them providing recommendations to the types of indicators that we would use to track outcomes at a population level. I also wouldn't want to limit it just to the two that I think were initially mentioned in the purpose and the intent. I would love to get feedback on all of the outcomes, all 10 of them, and all of the indicators. So I wouldn't want them to just focus on youth achieving their potential or Vermont having an inclusive government. I would want it all. The other component I think that would be nice would be to create some sort of structure here for the Youth Council to intersect with our performance accountability liaisons. And there's 2 at VDH and many across state government. But these are the folks that would liaise with me on the annual outcomes report, as well as the data collection associated with that, and the Government Accountability Committee and these recommendations. So if we could create those connections with the appointed performance accountability liaisons, I think that would be good to strengthen that network and create another opportunity for the council to have a say. We're also utilizing performance accountability liaisons in our programmatic and performance measure budget work, which also includes a whole bunch of data. So that would be another opportunity for the council to have a say in some of the data that we're collecting and we're using to monitor the success and results of our programs within state government. So even more opportunities for them to interject and help us make sure that we're getting things right. So anyway, more is what I would say. Generally, I think it's fantastic.
So I guess my question is, and I'll punt this one, I think, to Senator Collmore, since he chairs the Government Accountability Committee. Should the more be put in here right now, or should the Youth Council be set up and get started, and then the more comes back for changes?
Yeah, I would prefer not to load the plate up too early, if that makes sense. I did have a question.
Sure,
if I could.
sure.
So in the findings, the 21 and under age cell represents 24% of the population, and yet the 28 members that will make up this council are going to be between 11 and 18 years of age. How did we land on that age cell? You know, you could probably have an argument about 11-year-olds versus 19, 20, and 21-year-olds. Anybody?
If I may respond?
Sure.
Sure.
So on the House side, I think the original bill that was introduced, I think went up to 26. Then they talked about 21. being the cutoff. So it's 11 to 18 at the time of appointment, but they can serve for a 3-year term. So you could end up with a 19, 20, or 21-year-old. But what they were trying to do was not have a 21-year-old on the council who then was 27 or something like that. So that's where that age range got shifted.
Okay, so what about the 11 to 15? That's my point, is the bottom end of that age cell, not the top end. I don't.
Oh, sorry. So what we have found, and when we looked at other youth councils, is that and we've seen this as well. So we're in our third iteration of sort of trying to hold this space with this youth advisory group since 2020. And what we have found is that that you have that peer mentoring piece when you have the older age group with the younger age group together, and that it actually helps the younger ones understand as they go through the process, and they have the example of the older young people there to understand how to operate in that space, what's feasible, what it looks like, and then you're sort of grooming them for the next layer. It's in some other nations, they have youth councils for older groups, and then they have like children's parliaments starting as young as 9 years old. There's really something about having youth develop sort of that sophistication and learning in this space. So it was coming from, how do we create that pipeline? Really a very sweet spot for a youth council actually is around the 15, 16, 17-year-old is what we've seen as we've been running it the last few times. That's where we seem to have sort of the bulk of participation. So this gives you some ramp up on the lower end and then some continuation on the higher end as well. Una, did you want to add anything? Because I know you all debated the age quite a bit.
Yes, so adding to what Holly said, this was among the group of 50 youth, a topic of quite fierce debate, especially on the younger end. And what was finally arrived at was that age is not always an accurate indicator of a youth's maturity or ability to contribute to their community. The selection process is based on demonstrated representation of youth voice in their community. And so this will ensure passionate and capable members of the youth council. As Holly has said, having younger members means there will be people on the council serving on their second term who have had ample experience with the policies and procedures and be ready to fill leadership positions. And finally, young people, I think there's a general tendency to diminish someone because of their age, but this does not invalidate the experiences these people have in the education system. 11-year-olds will be in middle school, maybe even the higher end of elementary school, and these are important systems of education that still need to be discussed, and having a higher age bracket would mean we wouldn't have people directly in the experience of, say, middle school at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any more questions? And I think, Justin, that you are right, and I would suggest that the way that might grow is for you to remain in touch with the youth council, so that when they start looking at the outcomes on the two that they've identified here, it might grow to be more. But instead of, as Senator Collmore said, loading it up too much, you don't want to set a group up for failure.
Right.
You want to let them get there and then grow.
Get their feet up.
Yeah. So, yes.
So Justin, hi, I haven't met you yet. You're the new Sue.
Yes.
Hi.
The new Sue, yeah, I get that a lot. Yep.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's good to have you aboard. I'm Allison Clarkson. Because we haven't met. I would say to Una, I think that absolutely it's so much broader youth engagement on just education and climate. I mean, so many of the things in this committee we touch on. We just have gone through the Brattleboro Charter, which talked about youth voting, and we talk about that in judiciary with family court and youth, and especially we talk about youth economic development and workforce, and youth are discussed and the future of our state in almost every committee. So it's really, it's so broad that we hope youth will engage in our policies, not just the sort of obvious big ones, but, you know, driver's ed and driving. Just think of all. So anyway.
Anthony?
I just want to hear one of you, maybe whom is most appropriate, speak to what you mean by the Youth Voice Committee. What would be happening in the Youth Voice Committee?
Yeah.
Thank you. So kind of, pardon me?
No, go ahead. We're mumbling among ourselves here, saying where to find it. It's on page 4.
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Okay. So this kind of speaks to things that were earlier said about the scope of this bill going far beyond education and climate change. And so youth voice would speak to, okay, what are the areas where youth voice in government is most needed in terms of consulting? And so it'd be looking for avenues to how to do this. It'd, I guess, in a sense, be more of an operations committee, but also directly looking at where are the holes in what we aren't thinking about that does need youth voice. And it's slightly different from the ad hoc committee because it would be a constant search for where is youth voice needed in government, because as you have mentioned, youth come up quite a bit in your discussions, as we are 24% of the state and we are citizens of the state like everyone else whose lives are affected by government.
Thanks.
Okay, so I just have one final question. Was there any opposition from anywhere to this bill?
It had over 25 co-sponsors.
Now, I know, I just wanted to know if there was any opposition from anywhere. And
If I can speak to that, there wasn't opposition. There was concern about how to fund it in the House Appropriations Committee, and that's where the Department of Health stepped in to say that they would cover it within their existing budget. So there was that concern. There was also on the House side and the House Government Ops some concern that that they wanted to make sure that the Youth Council was going to be diverse in representing all parts of Vermont, including small rural communities. And that's where you'll see the language added about a report on, it's at the bottom of page 5 on the preservation of Vermont's tradition and the future of Vermont's rural character, activities and professions. That was added in the House Government Ops Committee. So it wasn't opposition, but it was a, you know, can we make sure that when we talk about diversity, that it's also going to include the rural communities as well.
thank you. Any more questions from the committee?
It's very exciting. I think this is great.
Are we ready?
I'd like to just take a day to
Okay.
think about it.
Your timing is just
No,
We would have,
we're-
but we didn't.
Okay.
almost.
You'd
like to take a day?
Okay, I did have it on the, I had rescheduled it for, let me see where. It is Youth Council. What number is this again? Oh, Youth Council, there it is. I have it scheduled for next Thursday at 1:30. But,
I don't know, that's more than a day.
it is more than a day. But if we could also, today is Wednesday. Let's see, Thursday, we have that at 1:30, 2:15, 3 o'clock, 3:15.
Friday looks pretty late.
We could, if we're ready tomorrow, we might take a vote on it. What you might do is, I will, if I can schedule it into tomorrow, into the agenda, I will have Gail send you an invite just so that you can join us when we vote, if that's okay. It would be we're an afternoon committee, so it would be in the afternoon. And I think somewhere right around a little after 3 is when I would suggest that we do it. We have a break at 3 and we're coming back, and then we're walking through the really titillating technical corrections bill that's hundreds of pages long. And so we might want to have some little excitement before we do that.
Or a lot of excitement.
Or a lot of excitement. So is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, did we tell Uda that if we have this youth council, they have to deal with the technical corrections bills?
No, we didn't
That's
tell
what we
her.
didn't tell you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
And this
Thank
is
you very
really,
much.
you guys did a great job of making it very clear what you wanted to do and how you were going to do it. So thank you.
Bravi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing it today.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much for your time.
Thank you.
You are welcome to
everyone.
stay with us as we talk about artificial intelligence.
Oh.
Wish I could.
Mark Hughes.
Well, there's Mark Combs also.
Mark Combs.
Mark Combs, Chief Technology Officer. Agency of
Oh,
Digital
okay.
Services.
We didn't know who it was because when people sign in, we want to know who they are. And who is John?
Quinn.
No,
It is
There-
John Quinn.
no, there is John Quinn there, but there's John in the right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to identify yourself? You're muted.
Oh, I know it is. It's just our Supreme Court Justice.
Oh, it's John Dooley.
It's John Dooley
here.
Okay.
Hi, John Dooley.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
So when you testify to committees, I will say you should have a better identity than just John and Mark, because we may not let you in.
Although we did.
So, okay. So Becky is our drafter, and it's H410. Becky, would you like to walk us through this? And I will say the same thing that I said with the bill we had earlier today, is that we sent the invite out to people. How much time we have for actual testimony will depend. We have a couple members that have to be out of here at 4:45. So we will also be we have this on the schedule again next Thursday at 2:30. So we'll get to as much as we can. Depends on how long it takes us to walk through and everything. I just want people to know that we don't expect to hear from all of you in detail today. But so Becky, would you like to? And I think that we should do this because this is a group that isn't with us all the time. So I think we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Jeanette White from Windham County.
I'm Anthony Polina from Washington County.
Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
And our missing member is Senator Ram Hinsdale from Chittenden. So with that, Mickey, do you want to take us away?
Sure. So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. So H410 is an act relating to the use and oversight of artificial intelligence in state government. Just for some context, in 2018, the legislature passed a bill that established the Vermont Artificial Intelligence Task Force. And some of what is coming out of that task force, the recommendations, are reflected in this bill here. And so the main things that this bill is doing, it is creating an artificial intelligence commission, and it is also directing the Agency of Digital Services to do an inventory of automated decision systems. So I'll touch on all that as I go through the sections, but they're sort of connected in a few sections, and I just wanted to give the main point of what the bill is doing. So in section 1 are some findings and intent, and this relates to the work and the recommendations of that artificial intelligence task force. So the General Assembly finds in subsection A that task force investigated the fields of artificial intelligence and made some recommendations for state action and policies with respect to this new technology. The task force found that the technology presents some opportunities for economic growth and improved quality of life, but also poses some risks of loss of some jobs and some privacy risks related to and other impacts on civil liberties. There's also a finding that large-scale technology change makes state rivals for the economic rewards, where inaction leaves state behind, and states can become leaders in crafting responses to this technological change. Top of page 2, the task force determines some steps that the state can take to maximize these opportunities and reduce risks. And in subdivision 5, the final report of the task force presented a series of recommendations for policies and actions consistent with the limited role of Vermont to direct the path of AI development and use in the state. And also concluded that Vermont can make a difference in maximizing the benefits of AI and minimizing the adverse consequences. Subsection B is the intent of the General Assembly to carry out the work of that task force by creating this Artificial Intelligence Commission and implementing some of the recommendations that come out of the task force, as well as conducting this inventory that I mentioned of all automated decision systems that are being developed, used, or procured by the state. Section 2 of the bill is amending the statutory requirements for the Secretary of Digital Services with respect to the reporting requirements that are required to come to the General Assembly. So if you go to page 3, there are a list of some of the reports that come to the General Assembly through the governor's annual budget request. And added to that in subdivision 8, annually will be an update to the inventory that is being required by this bill in section 3305 of Title III. And the next section, section 3, is what is adding this inventory. So there are some relevant definitions added in subsection A with respect to this inventory. And please let me know if you want me to stop or if I'm going too fast.
I think you're fine.
Okay, great. So on the top of page 4, there's several definitions. I'll just highlight some of them. An automated decision system is an algorithm that includes 1, incorporating machine learning or other AI techniques that use data-based analytics to make or support government decisions, judgments, or conclusions. And a automated final decision system means an automated decision system that makes final decisions, judgments, or conclusions without human intervention. And an automated support decision system is one of those systems that provides information to inform the final decision, judgment, or conclusion of a human decision maker. And finally, state government is defined here as cross-referencing 3 VSA 3301, which is includes just the executive branch of government. Subsection B is requiring this inventory. So the Agency of Digital Services shall conduct a review and make an inventory of all automated decision systems that are being developed, employed, or procured by state government. So again, that just means the executive branch. And then there's a long list of what that inventory has to include for each of those systems. So first, there's the...
Becky, can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
It strikes me that that's, that it's conceivable that AI systems or automated decision systems would be procured by all branches of state government, not just the administrative branch.
Well, this is the report they're giving us, so.
I think that
it strikes me that every piece of software that anyway, it strikes me that that's very limiting.
Well, I suggest that probably isn't a drafting issue, that's a policy issue for the
Okay, so that we
witnesses.
should,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that is a policy issue,
Right.
and that ADS, who is conducting this inventory, is responsible primarily for the executive branch, although there is some overlap. So I think they can speak to, their role, and the legislative branch would be Kevin Moore, and then the judiciary also has their own IT.
right. And that's why I believe it's Justice Tooley's here.
But it is a policy issue. It is not a drafting question.
Sorry.
So in terms of what has to be included for each of these systems, there's the name and the vendor, a description of the system's general capabilities, and that would include whether it's reasonably foreseeable capabilities outside the scope of the agency's proposed use, and whether that system is used or may be used for independent decision-making powers, and how that impacts decisions on Vermont residents. It would also be looking at the type of data input that the technology uses, and how that data is generated, collected, and processed, and what type of data the system is likely to generate. The system, whether the system has been independently tested by a third party and has a known bias or is untested for a bias. It will look at a description of the purpose and proposed use of that system. And that will look at whether decision or decisions it will be used to make or support, whether it is a final decision system or a support decision system, and the intended benefits, including any data or research that's relevant to the outcome of those results. The inventory will also look at how the data for that system is securely stored, and whether the agency intends to share access to the system or the data from that system with any other entity, and why. There will also be a review of the fiscal impacts of the system, including the acquisition costs and the ongoing operation costs, including the maintenance and licensing and compliance costs related to that. Any cost savings that come along with the use of the technology, and any current or potential sources of funding. I don't see any questions, so I can move on to section 4. So as I mentioned in section 2, there is this annual update requirement for this inventory that's going to be included in the Secretary of Digital Services annual reporting through the governor's budget request. Section 4 is in session law, and it is just more of a temporary update. I would call it for the end of this year, after this inventory comes out, that will go to Energy and Technology and the Committee on and Senate Finance with an update on this report and any recommendations for changes to the inventory, including how it should be maintained and the frequency of updates. So this is more of an immediate report coming from the inventory, where Section 2 is an annual report. Section 5 of the bill is creating in 3 VSA Chapter 69, the Artificial Intelligence Commission. Subsection A includes a definition of artificial intelligence systems, which means systems capable of perceiving an environment through data acquisition and then processing and interpreting the derived information to take an action or actions to imitate intelligent behavior given a specific goal. The system can also learn and adapt its behavior by analyzing how the environment is affected by prior actions. Subsection B creates this commission within ADS to study and monitor all aspects of AI systems developed, employed, or procured in state government. Subsection C is the membership. It is a 7-member commission. There's the Secretary of Digital Services, Secretary of Commerce and Community Development, the Commissioner of Public Safety, the Executive Director of the ACLU, one member of the commission who is an expert in constitutional and legal rights appointed by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, one member who is a social worker with experience in the field of ethics and human rights, and that member would be appointed by the governor. And then finally, one member who is an academic at a post-secondary institute appointed by the Vermont Academy of Science and Engineering. Just so you're following along, I'm now on page 8 in subsection D. With respect to the powers and duties of the commission, it's studying and monitoring AI systems that are developed, employed, or procured in state government, including the commission is responsible for proposing to the Agency of Digital Services for adoption a state code of ethics for AI in state government, and that state code should be updated annually. The commission would make recommendations to the legislature on policies, laws, and regulations for AI systems in state government. It would review that automated decision system inventory that's created by ADS and look at whether any of the systems affect the constitutional or legal rights, duties, or privileges of any Vermont resident, and whether any potential liabilities or risks that the state of Vermont could incur from its implementation. And I am seeing a mistake. There's an extra "and" here, which I will need to fix. And Subdivision 4 is a reporting requirement that annually House Energy and Technology and the Senate Finance and GovOps would get a report on the extent of the use of AI systems in state government and any short or long-term actions needed to optimize that use or mitigate risks. The impact of using AI systems on the liberty, finances, livelihood, and privacy interests of Vermont residents. Any necessary policies to protect the privacy and interests of Vermonters. And ensure that Vermonters are free from unfair discrimination caused or compounded by the use of AI in state government. Would also provide recommendations for any relevant national bodies on artificial intelligence. including the National Artificial Intelligence Advisory Commission, and its applicability to Vermont, and then finally, any other information that the commission deems appropriate. Subsection E says, and I think there's a mistake here, but it says the commission shall meet not more than 12 times each year or at the call of the chair. Top of page 10, subsection F, that a majority of members shall constitute a quorum of the commission. Subsection G provides that ADS will give administrative, legal, and technical support to the commission. And in subsection H, members of the commission who are not employees of the state and not otherwise compensated or reimbursed would be entitled to compensation and expenses. And that payment would come from an appropriation to ADS from their internal service fund. Section, I don't see any questions, so I'll move on. Section 6 is reporting and recommendation requirements for the commission. So by January 15th, 2023, the commission shall include in its reporting requirement that state code of ethics that it is recommending to ADS for adoption. Subsection B says that by January 15th, 2024, the commission shall develop recommendations for a clear use and data management policy for state government as part of its reporting requirements. And that would include protocols for how and when an automated decision system will be deployed or used and by whom, including factors that will be used to determine where, when, and how the technology is employed, whether that technology will be operated continuously or used only under specific circumstances, and when the system may be accessed, operated, or used by another entity on the agency's behalf, and any applicable protocols. It will also look at the notice that the system gives to an individual that's impacted by it, by the fact that that system is in use, and whether and what information should be provided, including the name and vendor of the system, what decisions it's being used to make, whether the system, whether it's a final decision system or automated support decision system, what policies and guidelines apply to the use of that system, whether there are any humans that verify the decisions that are made by the system, and how an individual can contest any decision that's made by that system. This use policy will also look at whether the system ensures that the agency can explain the basis for its decision to any individual that's impacted by it, including requiring the vendor to create such an explanation, whether the system is subject to any appeal or suspension if legal right, duty, or privilege is impacted by the decision, and what potential reversal by a human decision maker, the process through a timely process clearly described and accessible to that individual. And then finally, it would also look at what policies the state should have for a third-party entity to disclose potential conflicts of interest prior to purchasing or using the technology, and how the state would evaluate those conflicts. The commission would also have a report due in January of 2025 recommending whether the scope of the commission should be expanded to include artificial intelligence outside of state government. Right now, it's just focused on the use in state government. Whether there should be any changes to the structural oversight, membership, or powers and duties of the commission, and whether the commission should cease to exist on a certain date. And then finally, whether there are any other additional tasks the commission should complete. And then subsection D in this section is just defining those terms for these reporting requirements. And these are defined in the same way as in statute. Section 7 of the bill creates a position, a permanent classified position for fiscal year 2023 in ADS to manage and implement the work of the commission and serve as a state expert on AI use and oversight within the state government. The position is to be transferred and converted from an existing vacant position in the executive branch and shall not increase the total number of authorized state positions. Subsection B appropriates $150,000 to ADS from their IT internal service fund for that position. And I see there's a mistake there. I think that should say in fiscal year 2023. And then finally, section 8 of the bill is the effective date, and the act takes effect on July 1st of this year.
Thank you, Becky. Are there any drafting questions for Becky? No. So I think that we have time for a couple people to weigh in here maybe. I will jump, I think, first to John Quinn, since it seems that you are an integral player here in this. And I'm going to pose 2 questions that people can respond to. They're the only 2 questions I have right now, but more may be raised as we go through this. But I'm wondering if we, and this is just a word change, if we usually have a commission within an agency. Commissions usually are outside of state government, and I wonder if maybe the term division or office or something might be better than commission. We've in the past used commission to indicate outside, kind of more independent than within an agency or department. So that's the one question and then the other one, and that's just kind of a technical thing, but the other one, and somebody can respond to this as we're going through this, is I'm a little bit concerned that there is somebody here from the ACLU and an expert in constitutional and legal rights, and then it says specifically a social worker. And I'm not sure why we would specify that it had to be a social worker who had experience in the field of ethics and human rights, as opposed to somebody else who wasn't a social worker. So those are my 2 questions right now as we go forward. And I think that Senator Clarkson posed the question that could be addressed as to why we're limiting this to the executive branch and how we might incorporate the other branches, or should we, or how. But so I think those right now are the questions that we seem to have. So Secretary Quinn, if you would like to join us. It seems just a little while ago that we were confirming you in this committee.
And creating his agency.
Creating you, yeah.
And a wild ride.
Finally.
Really appreciate it. For the record, I'm John Quinn. I'm the State Chief Information Officer and Secretary of Digital Services. I'm going to yield most of my time to Mark Combs and other members of the commission. I had a few concerns with the bill that I wanted to raise for all of you to think about and decide whether or not they were appropriate or whether they should be changed. One of the first things I saw was that it pulls a position from the position pool, a classified position. This type of position, we would likely need to make an exempt position for a couple of reasons. One is the pay scale. In order to find someone that we deem appropriately qualified, as well as someone that, as technology changes, as artificial intelligence changes, that we're able to continually, look and evaluate, do we have the best person? Is this the right role? And so I would ask you to think about making that an exempt position rather than a classified position. We, as ADS, recently gave up at an exempt position before this was written, so there should be one in the pool for us if you see appropriate. Another thing that I saw in the bill was that legal services, admin services, and technical services would come from the Agency of Digital Services. The Agency of Digital Services has no legal people in the agency. We don't have anyone with a law background or any kind of general counsel. We rely on the AG's office for that. And we only have 2 admin people in the entire agency for 400 of us that are fairly needy from time to time. The third thing I saw was the internal service fund is the source of funding. And I'm wondering if that's appropriate or what the thought process is behind the internal service fund. That's a number that's a fund that historically has had a fairly large deficit in, and we've worked extremely hard to pull it from a deficit to a surplus number. But that internal service number is fairly small for the size of what we do already. And in the upcoming year, due to some cybersecurity funding requests, we'll be going up in that internal service fund quite a bit already. So I'm a little worried about the pressure in the internal service fund to the other agencies that we serve, wondering if maybe there's a different, more appropriate way to fund that. And then the last thing, I'd like maybe Mark to talk a little bit about the data management standard and whether, that's something that the commission should really be doing, ADS should be doing, or whether or not that's a task for Vasara. Those are my comments, and I'd yield the rest of my time to Mark Combs.
Okay, thank you. And I think that we're getting close to the time when we will turn into pumpkins. So I don't know if you want to start and be interrupted, or if you would rather wait and give us your full. We also have this scheduled for, what's this number again?
410.
410. For next Thursday at 2:30. And we have a fair amount of time scheduled for it then, so that we can hear from everybody. If you would. So it might, instead of starting and then interrupting, it might be better to just, and we'll make sure that everybody who's here now gets the invite, and then we'll have a fair amount of time on next Thursday, then a couple hours to. Is that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Mainly, we wanted to do a walkthrough today so that we were familiar with the bill and kind of start getting our brains engaged in it so that we would know what questions to ask and where to go. So
Yes, we are competing with artificial intelligence. We have to show that our human intelligence is up to the task.
yes, we do.
Senator White, next week I'll be taking my kids to Florida. Mark Combs is certainly capable of representing the agency and was also on the AI task force. So he'll be covering for me next week. I've kind of said, the issues I see with the bill, and he can represent me on anything else.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Judge Julie, that you'll be back with us, and Mark Hughes to be back with us next week.
Has John served on the task force?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll be
Yes,
happy to come back next week. That's fine.
Okay,
And I'll be there as well, Senator. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay,
Great.
so
Thanks a
thank
million.
you.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, I certainly have questions.
thank you. Yeah, I don't even know where to start.
I don't even know what an automated final decision system